We are Jonathan and Heather, and we sadly said goodbye to our 32-year-old daughter last December after a 4-year battle with cancer. If you have questions about life, illness, cancer, God, healing, life after death, facing the future when all looks bleak, or keeping going through the storm, or things haven't worked out quite how you expected, please join us as we think about some of these issues. So I have a question for you.
Great.
When did this all start?
As with us all, there are moments in our lives which we will never forget. So many moments we can't remember, so many days and weeks and months and even years that we can't remember, but there are moments in our own lives and moments in history that stand out. And one of the moments that stands out was what was meant to be the first day of a family holiday gathering down on Exmoor 4 and a bit years ago. So we've been married for 32 years or however many years, 30 years at that point. And our 2 children were married and they were settled and all was well, all was sunny in the world. And we arrived, Heather and I arrived on holiday. We got to the holiday home a few hours before everyone else was due to arrive. And I was sat down on a chair. I still find it slightly hard to sit on that particular chair. I always think of this moment. And I sat on this chair and I was reading a book or fiddling around on the phone but minding my own business. And Heather was in the kitchen. And I suddenly had an overwhelming sense out of nowhere that everything was fine. It was nothing more. I strongly believe I know that God whispered into my ear, into this one here. Not this one, it was in this one here. It was faint, but it was very clear. And it was, everything's fine. Kind of, that was it. It was like everything's fine. And it was like I knew everything was fine. You know, the sun was shining, we were on a holiday, but it was everything's fine. But it wasn't that loud. It was much quieter than that. It was like, shh, everything's okay. I've kind of got it all. It was summed up as that. I've got it all. You don't need to worry about anything at all. And no sooner had that word finished than the phone rang, Heather's phone rang, and I took off from my chair. Really, I can remember leaping from my chair, and I can't remember touching the floor, but I must have touched the floor because it was probably 15 meters round a corner and into the kitchen, through a hallway. And I don't know why I did that, but I shot in there as Heather answered the phone, and it was Millie. And it feels like before she said anything, I said, everything's fine. Now, what's the problem? And then maybe you want to say what she said.
So Millie had a little baby at this point, and she'd been breastfeeding the baby, and this cancer had got missed. She was 27, 28, something like that at the time. And eventually she'd been sent, this was the end of lockdown, end of 2020, and she'd been sent for a checkup at the hospital. They'd done a scan and they'd found this cancer massively spread under her arm as well. And she was in floods of tears. And as Jonathan said, it was really interesting as I'm hearing her speak to me, and it's the worst thing you could hear. I myself had had breast cancer about 10 years previous to that, but very small. It was like a centimetre in diameter, and wasn't expected to cause any harm, had a lumpectomy, had some radiotherapy. So I knew a little. I was familiar with the procedure, if you like. And it was really big, it spread. And it's the worst thing that you could hear, really. And as Jonathan said, Millie was crying her eyes out the other end. And I just had this most incredible peace. And I believe it was from God. It was supernatural. I myself would, I got worried about my kids. Where were they? Why weren't they home now? What's happening? And to hear this, I would normally have been, oh no, this is terrible. And I just had this incredible peace. And we went to bed that night and we slept through the night. And then we went back home the next day to begin the next stage, really, of our lives.
If you want to know more, that's what we're doing this for. We believe that God has allowed this to happen in our lives for a very good reason. We're not angry with God. And please don't say that I am or we are. We're not angry with God at all. I would say the very opposite. The very opposite. And determined to be the very opposite as well. It's not a stiff upper lip. God whispered peace into our lives. Yeah. He knew that there were 4 years of a storm coming up. I don't want to go through any of those days again, although we miss Millie so much. Obviously, we have a faith. We have a faith in God. We trust in God. In exactly the way I hope and pray that the Bible shows, we have a childlike, strong faith in God. Millie had that as well. Our son has that. Many in our family, many people we know have that. So for Millie, we know she's gone to heaven. We actually saw her go to heaven. We had this holiday picture, just in, was it September of last year? So just September, October, November, December, 3 months after this, Millie went not to France, but went to heaven. And one of the reasons, probably the big reason why we're sharing this, is we want you to not only know this peace, but to go to heaven one day as well.
Thank you. Join us next time as we continue the journey and answer some more questions, and post your own questions. We're happy to answer them.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Maranatha.